I'd like to call to order the Board of Education meeting for Tuesday, August 15th, 2023. Do we have any speakers related to items that will be discussed in closed session? Seeing none, the board will convene to closed session. The board will now convene the open session or report out the closed session. Live streaming on YouTube will begin now for the open session of the Board of Education meeting. The URL for YouTube live streaming may be found on the NHUSD Board of Education website. If you are joining us online via the Zoom webinar and you would like to provide public comment for this meeting, you may do so by utilizing the raise your hand option on Zoom, or if you're calling in by phone, press *9 and wait to be called upon. Community members may still provide public comments to the board prior to each meeting via email at publiccomments@nhusd.k12.ca.us. There were no comments provided to the board for tonight's meeting via the public comment email address. I would like to remind the public that we will not be responding to questions posed by those making public comments. Relative to closed session items 3.2 through 3.5, there was no action taken by the board. Relative to item 3.1, the board in closed session took the following action on 3 settlement agreements. In the matter of OAC case number 2023-050192, the board in closed session took action to approve a settlement agreement arising out of a dispute related to special education for a student with a total monetary value of $21,400 for educational expenses and attorney's fees. The board voted to approve the settlement agreement 5-0. In the matter of OAH case 2023-060558, the board in closed session took action to approve a settlement agreement arising out of the dispute related to special education for a student with a total monetary value of $11,800 for educational expenses and attorney's fees. The board voted to approve the settlement 5-0. In the matter of the third agreement, the board in closed session took action to approve the separation agreement arising out of a dispute related to a certificated employee with a total monetary value of $13,900. The board voted to approve the settlement agreement 5-0. I will now hand the meeting over to Vice President Kumar, who will preside over agenda item 5.
Thank you. Will the audience please rise and join me with my allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. May I have a roll call, please?
Mallory,
Here.
Buffet,
Here.
Gonzalez,
Present.
Kumar,
Here.
Ishihiro.
Here.
May I have a motion and second to approve tonight's agenda? So moved. Second. Discussion? Roll call, please.
Mallory,
Aye.
Buffet.
Aye.
Gonzalez.
Aye.
Kumar,
Aye.
Ishihiro.
Aye.
Back to you, signature.
Okay, may I have a volunteer read the land acknowledgement?
May I do it?
Yes, please.
Okay. We want to open up this meeting by acknowledging with respect and love that the land we are on today is the traditional ancestral homeland of the Ohlone Chochenyo First People. We recognize and thank the Ohlone people as the original stewards of this land. Indigenous people must not be spoken about in the past context as if they left on their own accord when the real causes for white supremacy, manifest destiny, and U.S. colonization. By recognizing we stand on the occupied indigenous territory of the Ohlone people, we recommit ourselves to listen to Native leadership and stand in solidarity with people struggling against systems of oppression throughout the world, past and present.
Thank you, Justice John. Moving on to 6.1, how many speaking requests do we have for topics that are not on the agenda, both in person and on conference? Okay, seeing no speakers, we will move on to item 7. 7.1. How many speaking requests do we have for topics that are on the agenda for both video conference and in person? Very well, we will move on. Moving on to 8.1, do we have a report from the CSEA president? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to 8.2, do we have a report from the NHTA president?
Good evening, President Chiara, Vice President Tamara, and other trustee members, Dr. Thompson, members of the staff, district here, folks at home, and Joe Angelos, President. Oh, thank you. I got technical difficulties. Thank you. I just wanted to say a few things. One is I do want to commend the district moving forward on the equity focus that we had. I think the PD that was put forth on August 4th was very much well received from the comments I got back from our members who attended. I think it's a big step on that attention to the importance. I also got great feedback about the keynote speaker, Mr. Carnapple, that was well received and very timely for what's been happening all over the place, in particular here too as well. I think the idea of dignity and belonging is a very succinct way for us to kind of concentrate how to move forward in this kind of time and space. We look forward to the ongoing thing from the Equity and Access Department with the TOSAs and the things that are ongoing with some extra stuff that's already put on the plate. So we want to appreciate and recognize that. I also want to kind of say that we really appreciate and commend Jason and his team opening up the school over the summer. We know that the big task of cleaning schools, getting it there. In particular, we also were able to put in place the new work order system, which was very well received. I think as with anything, it's always a time to work out kinks of things and how we can focus. And I know one of the things that came up recently, I already had a conversation with Dr. Thompson about the concern of how the new air conditioning systems are working and how the thermostats work. We're hoping to kind of resolve and get an understanding of how it works, because there are some concerns how classrooms are feeling environmental wise in terms of the temperature. But I think we're on the right way to collaborate and solve those things. So again, I just want to appreciate that and look forward to our continued conversation on working out those kind of ideas. And again, appreciate all the staff that worked over the summer to get there, as well as the technology folks to kind of get this up and running for this new work system.
Thank you, President Angelos. Moving on to 9.1, staff will give us an explanation on the process for developing new 2024-27 strategic plan.
Okay, that's me. So if we can shift over to the PowerPoint or the slide. All right, well, as everyone in this room knows, we are in the process. We completed our 3-year strategic plan, and we are in the process of developing a new plan. So you see that clicker, whoops. There we go. So I think it just for reference, it was a good reminder for me and everybody else when we're looking at a strategic plan. Why do we have one? What's the purpose? And the purpose is to make sure that our work is being driven by the community needs, and that the goals and the initiatives that come from the community become the foundation for our work, when that's reflected in all of our documents that guide us, like the LCAP, our budget. And the goal, the challenge with a good strategic plan is to make the goals and the action initiatives specific enough to provide real good sense of direction, but to allow a little bit of flexibility. So how it's implemented at different sites, for example, is able to be addressed. So that's the challenge. And also it should be a document that we can use to hold ourselves and for the board to hold district staff accountable. So those are the purposes. And if you have a good strategic plan, it does those things. I think our first iteration of the plan that finished last year was a good plan. It did those things. And so we're already underway in the process of trying to develop a new plan that will also do that. So in terms of timing, this is what we used to call year 0, where we are in the process of completing the plan. You can see there's a couple of boxes checked in that column, and the purple 23-24 column, where we have compiled a lot of data. And we did that intentionally towards the end of last year as we were gathering data for our LCAP, we also kept in mind that that data would inform our draft goals for the strategic plan. And in June, we took a lot of different data sources that we gathered from our community members, staff, students, and put them in buckets that became draft goals. And then we began the process of vetting them. We started with cabinet, then we went to our directors. We had a leadership advance with a broader group of folks, including NHCA representatives that were there, got their feedback. And we're moving on from there. So if you're looking at that checklist, we will begin in earnest the vetting process moving forward. So again, I just kind of went over this. We reviewed all of that data in June. We formulated some draft goals, and then I just talked through that. So that's good. So there's where we're at. And we'll bring these draft goals to all of our different partner groups, our parent groups, make sure that each site's SSCs and PTAs and PTCs that we have to provide feedback as well. And we'll continue to revise until we get something that would be a final draft, and we'll bring them to the board into December or January, depending on how the timing goes, for hopefully approval. So where do we get our data from? And if you take a look at the bullets here, in the process of getting those draft goals going, we collected data from every one of those groups. And again, that was done primarily in the spring of 2023. If you want to see what it looks like, all of these are live active links that you can access. So if you want to dig deep into any of the individual data sources, you can get pretty good out of the micro level if you want. And but I'm not going to jump into those. They're there for anybody that wants to look at them. And when we did that, when we kind of took all that data and dumped it into buckets, not surprisingly, they were sorted into 4 buckets. Student bucket, a bucket that had to do with our facilities and systems and services, family bucket, and a staff bucket. So when we broke it down even further, the student part of it, whoops, see if I can go, I can't go backwards. Okay, well, in those 4 buckets, in the student bucket, it became pretty clear that let's go backwards. All right. That there were 2 main areas for students. One was academics, and the other was support. So it's starting to take shape a lot like and probably not surprisingly, a lot like our initial strategic plan, where we had 5 goals. And it's shaping up that although what was shared was different, the categories are the same. And I'll share with you as we go through this how that's shifted a little bit. So part 1, and with the student goal, we broke it into 2 parts, and the teaching and learning goal, if you had to sort all of that data into themes within this bucket, increased rigor and in the core content areas was something that jumped out, making sure that our staff members have the data can be broken down in ways that's very usable in the classroom, so they can make adjustments and throughout more easily. And then there's a lot of interest in enhancing art and music and some of our enrichment programs. The Proposition 28 that passed, which should hopefully someday will help us with that when they sort out what the rules are related to that. And obviously, people our biliteracy pathway programs have been very popular. There's a lot of interest in continuing those and expanding them. And then in addition to arts and music, the STEM type focus on STEM, science, technology, electronics, and or engineering or mathematics is certainly something that was present there. More of that too. So you can take the art and music, the A from art, and add it to STEM, and you have STEAM, but it's broken into those 2 different areas. We separated out art and music because that will be with Prop 28, it's going to be an intentional focus moving forward. So if you were going to look at goals, these have been revised. This is the 4th iteration of these goals based on feedback we got, the most recent feedback from our leadership advanced group. And so I'm not going to go through these and read through them for you, but essentially this goal, based on what I just shared with you, there's a goal, and I'll just read the goal, and then you can see the action initiatives. But all students will be prepared for life, college, and career by participating in relevant, rigorous, innovative, and accessible learning experiences.
Quick point of order.
Yes.
How would you like to gather feedback from the board? Would you like for the board to wait, or would you like for for us to interrupt during the time.
If you feel like you have questions in the, please, yeah, please ask. Thank you, that's a good point of order. So, maybe I'll stop between goals. So that's based on the information we've gathered, the feedback we have received. This is the draft goal right now that we would move forward. Again, this is the board's opportunity to provide some feedback too. And if you don't want to, if there's, I know that's a lot to process tonight, but we're sharing it publicly tonight with everybody, and you have the opportunity to, if you to reflect on it personally, and you can share that, any thoughts you have with that I can use to further adjust or revise these goals. I can send out something where you can share that information with me if you'd rather do it. And reflect on this and provide more feedback later. Questions about goal 1 or draft goal 1, possible goal 1. All right. So student support, and there are things that jumped out at us. Last year we formed and were able to use our equity report card. And one of the things that we were able to do is use that to track our progress in addressing students that have historically struggled not only in our district, but nationwide. And then in our district in particular, some of the student areas like the Dakota region, where we've had students that have historically struggled. At chronic absenteeism, you're hearing about that from across the country. We had a dip in our average daily attendance last year too, so we are not immune to that. Making sure that we're looking at graduation rates, not just at Logan, but across the district, and trying to make some adjustments there and supporting that. Addressing disproportionate disciplinary actions is something that when we look at the data that we need to provide support there. And then the student need for more socio-emotional and mental health support is still very present. And also providing, related to that is some of the things that jumped out is that there are students who may not have reported it, but in some of the survey data we got back are feeling like they're experiencing bullying and bias. And so those are things that we want to, these are the categories that when you look at the data that jumped out at us. So that would translate into the possible goal 2, accessible and equitable support for students. And students' socio-emotional, behavioral, and academic needs are met in a systematic and comprehensive manner that values dignity and creates belonging. You see a theme there. And then there are the initiatives that would go along with that are more specific. So any questions about goal 2 before we move on? Okay. So staff, we should always, just like we should always have a goal about students and learning and support, we should always keep staff present. And in the data that jumped out at us, these are some of the areas that were, if you were going to put them in strands or themes, wellness, professional development, leadership development, continuing to keep communication with staff a focus, and reviewing how we recruit, hire, or retain teachers, and increasing our equity-based, our DEI capacity, and then again, kind of recruitment intention being a theme there. So these are all themes that turned into what could be a possible goal 3, valued, engaged employee partners. And all staff are partners who feel like they belong and have the opportunity to help create equitable access to learning for our students. So that's kind of an overarching goal with some of the action initiatives that would go along with that. All right, any thoughts on our possible staff goal? Okay, families. If you look at the data we gathered from the first go around with the strategic plan, and then you look at the feedback we got now, this is an area where I'd say if we had to pick one area over the last 3 years that was most improved, it would have been how we communicate with families. This is before it was some real basic things like we just want to know what information, we don't want it getting it 3 different ways, we want it consistent. And we, as you all know, we've done a lot of work changing our websites, streamlining how we communicate. And that was very clearly present in the data that was no longer a major issue. But I think what one of the strands that came out is really trying to strengthen that connection between homeschool and community and providing that, deepening those connections. And that the communication around what that looks like is something that it's not just, hey, open houses next week and we're going to give it to you in one consistent way. It's really what services are available, how do we get support, and how do we create these connections in a deeper way. I think we're well positioned to help address that moving forward, but it wasn't a theme that came out. And then expanding some of the programs we have, like Beyond the Bell, it was a great, our team over there did a great job of getting it going, but trying to expand that and programs like that to support our families. So that would be, again, the theme connecting schools, family, and community. And student families will have access to information and different resources on that that foster inclusiveness and belonging. And you're seeing a trend here with the belonging and the inclusiveness, that is definitely going to be a theme that you heard President Angelos talk about, that I think is going to be a theme for us moving forward. So again, action initiatives that go along with that. Sorry. Okay. Any more? I like to roll quicker better, guys. This one doesn't work. It's going. Here we go. All right. Okay. All right, with families in need, before we move on to district structures and systems. All right, as far as the district structures and systems, facilities and things that we have, these are some of the themes that emerge. Creating sustainable practices and systems, and when we talk about that, we're talking about things like energy conservation, waste reduction, and recycling efforts, things like that emerge. Improving food quality and service efficiency was something that emerged. Improving facilities, and when I say improving facilities, not only looking at things like what we're doing in here, but also cleanliness and really focusing on making sure our schools are as clean as they can be. School safety is always going to be present with the environment we live in. It has to be. And then from a budget stability standpoint, absenteeism and enrollment is certainly going to be where districts all around us continue to decline in enrollment, and I think that trend will continue for us. And then with the budget uncertainty that looming out there, making sure that we can maintain a budget that allows us to support our facilities, our students, and our employees is going to be pretty important moving forward. And that emerges a theme. So if you're going to translate that into a possible goal, learning in safe, innovative, and sustainable environments. And safe and innovative learning environments will be maintained and improved while incorporating sustainable practices and enhancing fiscal stability with several action initiatives that go along with that. Dang it. Okay, oh, there we go. Before we move into next steps, any thoughts on goal 5? Again, I know this is a lot to process, so you'll have the opportunity to provide feedback.
I do have a comment, and this kind of spans all the goals. I was just waiting until we're done. So one thing that the community shares and asks for a lot is enrichment programs. So I was hoping the district could consider supporting more enrichment programs across the district. And this is not only in STEM, so there's like, where my son goes, Easton has an enrichment program north. So the thought was it would be wonderful to bring it to all our elementary school sites, because it's a wonderful enrichment program. And then we have neighboring school districts that have STEM enrichment programs like science, Olympia, and math Olympia, and there's science camp that fifth graders go to. So it would be great if we could just look into supporting enrichment programs.
Thank you, and that's good feedback. That actually did get echoed in when I was talking about programs like Beyond the Bell. That's the kind of thing they were talking about, is enrichment programs for students beyond the school day. So that was definitely a theme that was heard, and these are the types of things these are good suggestions. So that I think will be, as we're moving forward, we'll be looking at for things like that we can build in. The arts and music block, or not block grant, may help with some of that too. I'm hoping. Good feedback.
Any other feedback?
All right, so moving forward, we will begin taking these and shopping them around, sharing them in a variety of ways. Like I said, we'll be bringing them to all of our parent groups, all of our employee partner groups for specific feedback. We're going to host 2 town halls one on October 24th and one on October 26th. Right now, they are scheduled for the 24th one will be at our family center, and the one on the 26th will be tentatively scheduled at IDCMS. So we'll run that from 6 to 8 and have translation services in Spanish and Mandarin for both of those sites.
Just about.
Great.
Yeah, this was a question about goal number 5 is learning in safe, innovative and sustainable environments, kind of going with the safety and environment. This was on consensus. I want to say 2 meetings ago. This was at the end of the school year last year, which is the 2022-2023. There was some at a particular elementary school. Some racial slurs there. I think I requested that there be for that school site to have more PBIS assemblies where they're addressing that. But also I don't know, I think you were talking about you're gonna look into that, but I was thinking like district wide. And this kind of goes also with safety with our bathrooms and, you know, what does it really look like? As opposed to just pushing it on teachers, asking teachers, hey, talk to your students about this. It should be like a district-wide thing, and it should be part of the PBIS plan, also included. So that's what I hope for.
Yeah, we have that here, and that's something that I think went into, it is directly related to the second, what would be right now our second bucket, our goal there in terms of student support. And the part of our work around creating a culture of dignity and belonging will be trying to address some of that at the school sites. And that's going to be, we have it here, and I think the response was that we will have our equity access and achievement team, something that's going to be there, that they'll be looking at ways to support that. We have our TOSAs that do a lot of that type of work, working with staff to help students over there. So it will be something that we'll be taking a look at this year as we roll that out. And it's certainly something that came up as an area when it comes to goal 2. If we're going to create a culture of belonging, we have to do that. That's what the specifics come in. So thank you for that. That's it's not something that's been lost, or something that will be present moving forward.
Okay. Before we move on, since we don't have any questions, and there seems to be like, this is something you have to kind of think about for a while. What is your recommended method for board members to provide you feedback?
So what I think I'll do is I'll share these with all of you in a format that you can read through and provide feedback to me on. And then I can take that feedback and incorporate it in there, and I'll send that out. Should be able to get you something tomorrow where you can do that, where you can reflect on it. And I'll probably do it in a way where you can reflect on each goal individually, and then have a summary where you can reflect on that to provide me with that feedback. What I'll do is I'll consolidate that feedback and then share how that what that looks like in terms of revised goals. And we can do that before the vetting will begin in earnest in September, late August, September. So we have a little time for the board to reflect and provide me the feedback before we go full bore into it. The big launch will be in this process. We have our data district breakfast coming up, where we've invited a lot of our community partners and members, city council, different members from community organizations to come to hear a little bit about what we're doing. And that will really be the launch of the fall vetting process. So getting your feedback before then and making any tweaks will be pretty important. So I'll get you something tomorrow where you can provide that feedback. I'll share it back out in summary, and then we'll go from there.
Do you have a timeline that would make the board's feedback most useful to you?
If we have it, having everything said and done before, I'll come up with a timeline, but we have time. Like I said, I'm kind of using the state of the district breakfast as the official launch of the fall vetting. And so through September and October, we'll do most of the vetting work. And then in November, we'll see where we're at and where the board wants to go. Probably at that November board meeting, we'll figure out how you want to proceed, and we'll go from there. So I'll get you a date, probably a week.
Okay. All right, seeing no further comments, thank you. Moving on to 10.1. 10.1, as required by legislation enacted as part of the settlement of the Williams versus State of California lawsuit. The Board of Education must receive for information only a quarterly report indicating the number of complaints received related to number one, sufficiency of instructional period, instructional material. Number two, emergency or urgent facilities conditions that pose threats to health and safety, or three, teacher vacancies or misassignments. Staff has submitted this report to the board, and it will also be filed with the Allegheny County Office of Education. As indicated in the report, the district has received 0 complaints under the Williams Uniform Complaint Procedure during the fourth quarter of 22-23. This item is for information only and requires board action. Moving on to 10.2, as directed by the board, the Communication Advocacy Committee has taken on the task of drafting with both the decision framework and a slate of resolutions to clarify the board's direction and intent, and to streamline the staff effort, creating monthly celebratory resolutions and collecting supplemental materials. Director of Digital Services, John Mass, will now present to the board regarding the process, the guiding principles, and the recommended slate that will be coming up for action 12.4 tonight. Director Mass.
Thank you, and good evening, President Nichihara, members of the board, Dr. Thompson, I'm John Manos, your Director of Digital Services. And I'm here tonight to summarize the recent history related to board resolutions and to share with you the recommended slate of resolutions for 23-24. And as the five of you are intimately aware, the board has for years passed resolutions that honor traditionally marginalized communities, groups of folks. And these resolutions historically have provided history to the community about the achievements of these populations of people, their accomplishments, and oftentimes some of the struggles that they historically have faced and sometimes still do face. And a number of years ago, a couple of years ago, an interest was expressed by the board to really to have staff work to make these resolutions come alive and have them be more than an agenda item. And so to that end, staff worked with teachers to generate supplemental instructional materials that could be more easily incorporated into classroom instruction to really help with these resolutions to come alive in the classroom. When we did that, when we started the initial rollout of these supplemental instructional materials, we found they were very, very well accepted, that folks really liked them. And we were able to gather lots of evidence, lots of artifacts to demonstrate that folks were really taking this to heart. And we had enough evidence and enough artifacts that Dr. Thompson would often put together presentations to share with the board. And so we did that for a good year or so. What we found last year, although those resources are still available, we communicated them to folks, we really were not seeing the evidence, the pictures, the work samples, the artifacts that we had seen previously. And so we wanted to kind of explore that a little bit as to see if maybe there's possibly a disconnect between the resolutions and the work that's going on in the classroom. And so we surveyed our SEC principals who have their finger on the pulse, and we also surveyed our EAA TOSETs who work very closely with equity and other initiatives to get their feedback and input on the survey, on the resolutions, and also on those supplemental materials. And what we found is that in general, the resolutions are very well received. People really tend to like them. The materials, the supplemental materials, were very well received. We asked questions like, what of the ones that we've done recently, which of these were the easiest to incorporate? Why? Which of these were harder to incorporate and why? And for the ones that were the easiest to incorporate, the feedback we got were those were ones that were big, national, common, well-known, very well-established celebrations. Black History Month, Women's History Month. Those are some of the ones that there was a lot of resources for. There were just available online and in past practice. There's a variety of activities and supplemental materials that could be brought in. They also shared that there were some of the resolutions that were a little bit more of a challenge to incorporate into a classroom. And when we asked kind of what made those more challenging, there were topics about like there was, some of the things they suggested there weren't a whole lot of materials out there that they could find. Two, that they weren't they felt that they didn't have a lot of background or experience in these particular initiatives. And so it was challenging to kind of teach about it. And frankly, the third reason they talked about was a really charged political climate that made those very challenging. So we took that feedback at the Communication Advocacy Committee, we took that feedback and other information and really worked to start fleshing out criteria we would use to recommend to recommend resolutions that would be passed by this board and passed down into these school sites, as well as put together a slate of recommended resolutions for the board to review, consider, and later in the action item, amend as necessary and approve. And so you have, in the board agenda and shared up here, you have the criteria that we work to develop. You also have the recommended slate of resolutions and changes to our historical resolutions that the Communication Advocacy Committee is recommending. And with that, are there any questions from the board regarding this?
I'll open it to the board. Board have any questions with regard to either the decision-making framework, which are the guiding principles, and or the slate that will come up before us? Vice President Kumar.
Hi, so I don't have a question, I just have a couple comments. So one is, thank you for providing staff with support on behalf of the district provides learning materials. I think it's very helpful. And two, I really appreciate that we survey the staff because I think it's important to get their input on this. So thank you for doing that. That's all I have.
Okay, trustee Rafael.
I see that Muslim awareness and appreciation month is recommended for this day. May I know why? And Sikh awareness heritage months, therefore, we will explain why.
Sure. One of the criteria that we worked to develop in that Communication Advocacy Committee really focused on religion. And those were some of the resolutions that were more challenging for our staff to incorporate. And I think that was mostly from their lack of experience and knowledge, about those particular peoples and religions. And also that, I think we start to put ourselves in an interesting position when we are putting forward, kind of religious, information and about religions and not all religions or, more religions. And we get we could get questions about like, well, why aren't we doing Catholicism Awareness Month? And why aren't we doing these sorts of things? And so I think it was the committee's recommendation that moving away from kind of the religious, heritage or resolutions, and instead focus more on people. And in that conversation and in the information and supplemental materials that we would share, we would be able to talk about not only the people, but also cultural celebrations that could include religion and other sort of practices and, foods and dances and just a wider swath of cultural experiences as opposed to simply focusing on religion.
Thank you. Actually, Livermore, they're like doing Muslim Association Month tonight, and Fremont is doing a week from now. So all our neighboring cities are celebrating, and I was approached by a Jewish friend, and they wanted to know if the Jewish month is I think in October somewhere there, and she wanted to know if they could also have a Jewish appreciation month. So that's not a possibility. You can just delete all the religious
I mean, really, that is for the board to decide, so we are the ones that will be making the decision whether or not that's something that we want, and the purpose of the. Sorry, I didn't just
Please.
talk, you know, but part of the reason why we had a decision framework, the principles, so that we kind of explain. Like the backing of all of those decisions, so I think that's probably, you know. We're probably going to have some conversations like that at some point, we're gonna have to address all of them at some point, but at least the decision framework. Allows the board to kind of rationally, you know, kind of measure each consideration.
And I strongly feel that there is a need for these because if you see like since 9/11, Muslims and Sikhs have been targeted. For hate crimes as well as anti-Semitism, like goes to and like all those hate crimes against Jewish community. So if like you know, people meet them, know their culture, then they would know like there's nothing to be harassed or there's nothing to harass them or there's nothing to be afraid of them. So thank you.
Okay. All right, any further comments on this information item?
I'll
Just-
say mine, for the actual action, when we get to the action item.
Okay. Right. All right, then, moving on to, thank you, Director Maddox. Moving on to 10.3, we have items from the board and superintendent. Who would like to start?
I'll go.
Okay, trustee Sean.
Okay, so, all my days are running together. School have started. And I want to welcome everybody back, staff, teachers, students, administrators, everyone. I did attend the PD that we had prior to school starting, which I can't remember what it was because I'm also teaching, so on the board, thank you. And I really enjoyed it. I would say I enjoyed the keynote and I also enjoyed the different breakouts. So we had a inclusivity in the classroom breakout, and then we had a dealing with unconscious bias. And I really found those to be very, very effective and very, I guess, effective because they affected me. and I think that they really reached at this human level their sense of belonging and dignity in a way that was very impactful. And I also attended afternoon sessions, and so it was really great. And I just want to commend all the staff and everyone who worked on that, all the facilities people who made it happen, food services for providing some food for us. Everything just went really, really, really well. It was very well done, very professional, and extremely impactful. So thank you. And I've heard a lot of great feedback. So I specifically, I wasn't trying to hide, but I did not wear my name tag saying on the board just so I could hear people around me giving like honest feedback, and everybody seemed very excited and appreciative. So that's it for me.
All right. Trustee Rocket.
So I was not able to attend fully the PD day because I had prior commitments. So I just attended part of one session. And but I did go to Pioneer and to receive the students and the excitement the families had, the students had. It was really fun to see that. So thanks so much.
Okay, trustee Gonzalez.
Yeah, so over the summer is a great time for our New Haven community to recharge, is really a recharge for our staff, parents and students, and to come back ready to go, because it is go when we come back. And just the beginning of this year has because New Haven was one of the first districts to start out this summer. Just a really successful opening. My brother, who has two children at, Logan. Just went on and on how great, the opening of the school was, that the communication was great, text, email. They, my niece and nephew clearly got their classes and just everything was so smooth and just other like feedback from the community, it was great. And so, very happy that happened, you know, because, first day of school, you know, could be disastrous. And most of the time it is, you know, it's really confusing, try to get back into it. So, very pleased with that results. My first day will be in 2 days on Thursday, so. Hopefully I can emulate what New Haven's doing and. Just really optimistic about this year. One thing I do want to mention in the world of post-pandemic public education, you know, it's extremely difficult to learn, you know, as a student and to teach as an educator. And SEL, social emotional learning, is so needed to address some of these extreme attention seeking behaviors. And so you know, some of the things we've had, you know, not only in our district, it's statewide, countrywide, there's some bullying, racial slurs, you know, hate speech, graffiti, vandalizing the bathroom, and just our students. And again, it's not just New Haven, it's other kids who just throw their litter and trash and expect, well, someone gets paid to pick that up. When we should instill in them those values, why we should clean up after ourselves, why we shouldn't have to clean up after them. And so some of the systems we should have at every school site should be, we would like to know if those are in place there. And so a lot of it is the PBIS flow chart. I would like to know, does every school site have that? How often are the PBIS committees meeting to discuss that, to look at data, to do that important work? And how often does the school site have assemblies with the students and talking about these issues, talking about cleanliness of the bathroom or why it's wrong? And what does it look like to use the bathroom and using the 3 Bs, you know, being safe, responsible, and respectful, and just all those important things. And maybe it's just elementary that need those refreshers, but to put it back on the teachers is not enough, because some might be doing it, some might not. And so to show the severity of these issues, there needs to be assemblies, there needs to be some way to look at it. So I'm hoping that we can do that with our leadership and look at those results, because I would love to look at some of that data with that. So that concludes my. Vice President Kamal.
Thank you. Well, congratulations on a very smooth opening and a very good first week. I want to thank our superintendent, Dr. Thompson, and staff for releasing schedules early. My son personally had an issue with the schedule, which is not to happen, but it got resolved before the first day of class, and I think that's what we were going for. So thank you very much for serving the community on that. Two, I just wanted to share, I had an opportunity to meet with every state superintendent of California. And she shared that there's going to be a great need for teachers going forward, especially with the expansion for UTK and such. But what's interesting is that there are pathways to the California College Promise Grant, where you can actually earn your credential and become a teacher with low to zero cost. And I think that's pretty amazing. That's something not everyone knows. And I would love for anyone to spread the word. We really need good passionate teachers, and we want to make it easy for them to get their teaching degree. So that's it for me.
Okay, thank you. Did you want to go? No, I know. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'd like to echo the opening remarks. This was the smoothest opening that I've had certainly in the 5 years here. One of the smoothest openings I can remember in my career. I feel comfortable saying that now that we're in the second week of school, as you never want to jinx things. And that's a direct attribute to our staff. President Angeles mentioned Jason's team, and they did a great job getting everything going. Our staff at Logan in particular, that's That's the big one, right, where you have 3,000 plus kids there, and they did a great job of getting everything in place, so I thank you staff for all that hard work. A lot going on, you're in the middle of it right now, for example, we still have upgrades, a lot of upgrades that happened over the summer. And some that are continuing to happen here, our boardroom as is an example, where we'll have that done, just a heads up, we may need to move this board meeting in September or October, depending on when the tech comes in. And I'm not too sure how, we'll see, we're trying to do that here, but whenever we take over this space, we're disrupting a day of their work, and we want them to get done as quickly as possible. And when it comes particularly to ordering parts and technology parts in particular, you were at the mercy of supply chain stuff, which is still a problem. So I don't know how it's gonna play out, but we'll come up with a good plan B for that. However, it may not have live streaming to go with it, so I'm just kind of front loading that now. We'll see what we can do, but I'm not too sure. Hopefully we'll get this done. Again, we're somewhat at the mercy of supply chains and whatnot, but we'll get it done as quickly as we can. Speaking of facilities use, we have a study session at the end of the month. We're going to put out at board request, we're going to put out a timeline of the process to our community users, our community facility, people who use our facility, kind of outline the process. We'll have our meeting and we'll present some information to you. Then we have on the 19th of September, we'll hold a public hearing on the facilities use process and rates and things like that. And so that's a date, you're welcome to attend as board members, but it'll be basically just the opportunity for the community to voice their opinions about any changes to the facilities use process or rates, and that'll be on the 19th of September, and at probably 6 o'clock. Location to be determined right now. It'd be great to do it in here if we could, but I don't know if this is going to be available. So anyway, I'll send you a draft of that notice, but we'd like to get it out to our community users next week. And so anybody that has an interest in our facilities can know how they can provide input. Day 4, as far as attendance goes, we are down below projection, which isn't unusual for this time of year. And our student and family services department let me know that they're still enrolling lots of families as we speak. So hopefully we pick up from where and like we have in the past and go from and continue to get kids into our schools. There's a lot of verifications going on because every year that some of the students we think are coming don't show up, and students that we didn't know were coming do. So we're in that process of balancing all that now. The good news is from the certificated staffing side of things, we are fully staffed. So that's great. And we have fewer paraeducator vacancies that we've had in the past, and more interest in substitute teaching. So we haven't had any uncovered classes yet, which is great. So far, again, we're only a little over a week into it. We're off to a good start that way too. And that is my report.
Okay. All right, so on August 4th, I attended as well the entire day of the professional development here at Logan. It was great to see the district rallying around the concentration of dignity and belonging. It was very, very well organized. It was very well attended. Thank you for all the teachers who took the time to be part of it. I'd like to call out Director Nobles, Assistant Superintendent Stevens, and Director McKelvey and their staffs for the great work of organizing such a great event. So thank you for all that you do. It's recognized. Also on 8/7, I was at Logan with several other of the trustees to provide tacos and t-shirts to our staff. It was a great event, great tacos. I indulged a little bit too much. Also, super smooth first day at Logan. I've heard nothing but great things about the rollout. Thank you to Trustee Vice President Kumar for the recommendation about releasing the schedules a little bit earlier. That helped give a little bit of time for the staff to adjust. We had a government session on 8/8. And I thought it was a really good natural conversation that we were able to come together as a team to figure out ways that we can improve our governance efficiency. And everybody has homework, and they're going to be paying attention, or they're going to be really focusing at our governance handbook to see what are some things that we can do even better. As a request, as requested by Coach Crittenden, I will be visiting the Easton campus on 9/20. Looking forward to that. I also have a site visit scheduled for Emmanuel tomorrow on 8/16 and Hillby Crescent week 23. So a lot going on there. I also did want to recognize the passing of one of our longtime CCMS teachers, Kelly Thomas. She passed away, and we just wanted to recognize her. We will be closing. We'll be adjourning this meeting in her honor, as well as another community member. Lastly, I'll finish it up. Just wanted to recognize my eldest daughter, Jenna, Logan grad, Davis grad. She just started her grad program this morning, so I'm going to wish her luck. And that concludes my report. Okay. Moving on to 11.1, a report from the Finance, Technology and Facilities Committee. Do we have a report?
No. The next meeting is TBD.
Got it. Okay. Moving on to 11.2, report from the Communication and Advocacy Committee. I've got something on. Okay. The committee last met on June 27th. We discussed recommendations and recommendations and framework for the item that we just discussed in 10.2. We also reviewed a flyer that the team generated regarding middle school enrollment, and our next scheduled meeting is September 14th at 4. Okay. Moving on, 11.3, we have report out from the Policy Review Committee.
The next meeting is scheduled for September 5th at 5:30 p.m.
Thank you, Trustee Mallory. Okay, other committee reports, 11.4. Vice President Kumar.
There's a lot going on with NHS at the foundation. We have many events coming up. There's Stars on Stage on the 30th of September, and then there's Mudstrut. So we've been very busy putting everything together. I do not know when the next meeting is. The next board meeting is, because I'm attending all the planning meetings. So do you have that date?
I think it's the 24th. It's, I think, next Monday.
All right, good to know.
Okay, and then in addition to that, certain members of the foundation, myself, Vice President Kumar as well, on behalf of the foundation, we will be working with school site councils across the district to talk a little bit about the foundation, what it does, and how they can participate. And so that's being rolled out, scheduled with the district staff. Yes, Trustee Ray.
So our Mission Valley ROP meeting, like last week meeting, so to update on that. So I'd like to share some figures from our last week's meeting. ROP has provided high-level CTE program for our school district, and it's two other like JP districts where there's highest benefit for students to hands-on learning in 10 CTE career pathways. 85 of Mission ROP courses receive UC-APG credits. In the 2020 school year, over 2,000 students earned over 7,000 college credits in ROP articulated coursework. And in the 2022 school year, 300 students completed 39,000 internship hours, which is approximately 100 hours per student internship hours that they got. So with all this stuff, and in an effort to support the partner school district, ROP has aggressively pursued grant funding to invest in CTE programs and facility upgrades to classrooms on Logan, Conway High School site, as well as NUSD, FUSD, and ROP campuses. And also ROP has been flat funded at the 2013 pass-through level for the last 10 years. ROP has rallied on grants to cover increased operating costs and to support ending fund balances. However, this has caused ROP to fall behind. The past 10 years of grant funding have allowed ROP to invest in fact-based programs and infrastructure. The cost of employees, salaries and benefits has surpassed a JPU district pass-through continue that funding as the current funding agreement, and any charges to matching grant program will most likely force ROP to reduce CD program services to JPA member districts. So ROP and JPA member districts need to pursue discussion to address increasing the pass-through funding level amount to ensure ROP does not need to reduce programming in our schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Rebecca. Okay. All right, seeing no further items, we will move on to action items. 12.1, may I get a motion second to expel student number 1?
So moved.
Second,
Discussion. Okay, roll call please.
Troy Mallory,
Aye.
Fay, Gonzalez,
Aye.
Kumar,
aye,
Ishihara.
Aye. May I get a motion second to approve a master services agreement with Pro Trainings for Pro Trainings LLC for 23-24.
So moved.
second,
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Abstention. Motion carries. Approval of a memorandum of understanding, sorry. May I get a motion in a second to approve a memorandum of understanding with Dr. Jennifer Lynn Wong for 23-24?
So moved.
second,
Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Abstentions. Motion carries. Moving on to 12.4, may I get a motion in a second to approve the board general monthly resolutions for 23-24?
second,
Discussion.
I'd like to speak on this.
Yes, please.
I agree that as a school district and as an educational institution, that is especially a public one, it is not our duty and we should not be teaching religion and faith-based education in our classrooms. However, the stated purpose of our monthly resolutions is to lift up those that are marginalized in our communities. I think that we can continue to lift up our Muslim and Sikh community members without crossing the line into teaching religion in our schools. Trustee Burfay made a very good point about Muslims and Sikhs being targeted, especially due to head coverings, because after 9/11, I think even before 9/11, but it really did exacerbate the issue. And they're regularly targeted for hate crimes and bullying. And if we do not address this in our schools and create awareness, okay, this is for, a religious reason, here's the culture, here's this. We don't necessarily have to go over the tenets of the Muslim faith in order to create awareness about Muslims and Sikhs to the point where we can create that sense of dignity, belonging through dignity for our Muslim and Sikh students. So I'm just gonna be forthright and say that just like we don't have a White History Month because we teach white history every day. We don't need to have a Christian History Awareness Month because our country is predominantly Christian and those values are on the forefront every day. Just like we don't have a straight Pride Month because every day is straight pride. I don't think that the argument can be made that just because we appreciate and recognize our Muslim community and our Sikh community and all the contributions they have made historically to our larger community. Meaning that we have to have, awareness months for every single religious group. That is not the case. What we're doing is identifying particular people that are historically marginalized that we feel we need to create a sense of awareness, appreciation, and understanding for. And I think this is very much still needed for our Muslim community and our Sikh community. I am not necessarily a religious person, and I don't think we should teach religion in a public school. However, I think that we need to find a way to still have these Muslim Appreciation Month and Sikh Awareness Month. To create awareness and a sense of belonging for those students and families. We don't have to teach about religion to do so.
Thank you, trustee Sean Mallory. Are there any other points of view on the board? Vice President Kumar.
I would, thanks for sharing with your thoughts. I'd like to add that we do have many minority religious communities like Hindus and the Jewish community, there's many more. So by having some and not others, we would like to make sure that we are not ignoring or leaving out certain religions. And I was in the first two or three meetings of the CNA committee where we discussed this, and I would like to share that we had a robust discussion. We did look at staff recommendation. We looked at the feedback from our staff, and we did put some thought into this. So that's just, I was not present at that last meeting, but I did attend the first few. And it would be wonderful if we could recognize all the religious communities, but seems like we do have constraints in that sense.
Okay, as a reminder, we have a motion and a second to approve the slate. Is there any further discussion before we proceed with the vote? Okay, and if it's the pleasure of the board, maybe we do a roll call vote? Is that fine? Okay, roll call please.
Sean Mallory. Rafay.
Nay.
Gonzalez.
Nay.
Kumar.
I'd like to abstain.
Ishihara.
Aye. Okay, so the motion does not pass. I suppose one of the things that we can do is we can refer this back to the CNA committee, take the feedback from the board, and come back at a later time with another recommendation or another slate. Does that sound all right? All right, thank you, team.
Just one point, if it's, actually, we have. I'm assuming we would want to continue with, I don't want to not do some, for example, we have Hispanic Heritage Month coming up in September. Are we okay continuing with that as just a? We can bring a new slate to the board meeting and.
We can, why don't we do this, we won't work through this as a slate, we'll just use that as a one-off resolution as we have in the past.
Okay, that makes sense.
All right, great, so moving on. Moving on to 12.5, may I get a motion in a second to ratify approval of the ACT district testing program?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. All right, moving on to 12.6, may I get a motion in a second to approve the memorandum of understanding with the University of Massachusetts Global?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Okay, moving on to 12.7, may I get a motion in a second to approve a contract with Educational Management Solutions LLC?
So moved.
Second.
All right, discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay, Okay, thank you. Moving on to 13, are there any items from consent that any board member would like to pull for separate vote? Okay, seeing none, may I have a motion and a second to approve items 13.1 to 13.38?
So moved.
Second,
Discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Abstention? All right, motion carries. All right, moving on to 14. One more, we're skipping 14.1, nothing was removed from consent. 15.1, governance review. Any points of feedback? Any stories? Yes.
Great job, but don't we have like a standing rule of abstaining? Or not abstaining unless there's a conflict of interest. Well, I assume there's a conflict of interest, right?
Yeah,
Because
it's
you're-
not a conflict of interest, I think it's inconsistent if we are recognizing some minority religions but not others. But I don't have enough information, so that is grounds for abstaining.
My understanding, sorry, I was going to bring up the same exact point, trustee Gonzalez. Usually the only time that it's generally good practice to abstain is when we have a specific conflict of interest on, so it's our jobs as board members to take positions one way or the other. And so that's, yeah,
So when I did look up the Robert's rules for parliamentary procedure, that does count for, it doesn't only have to be a conflict of interest with one. And but not having enough information. And if I don't have enough information to vote your name, I will not want to vote your name.
probably maybe another way of handling that is if you don't have enough information that maybe we could have to table the item or something along that item, along that lines. We can take that up at a governance session and we can continue to refine our governance handbook to be a little bit more clear on that. And if we are going to be using that as a grounds for abstaining, then we should probably call that out, because right now the general practice is that board members do vote on things that come before.
So when you say general practice, that's something this board has adopted.
And when you go through CSB Master of Governance, it's also practice that's also recommended as well.
That's where I heard of the abstinence reasons. So
Okay, well, then maybe we could get some alignment
I
there.
think we should.
Okay. All right. Governance review, board consensus items. Does anybody have any items that they would like to refer to staff?
I have a request. I'd like to start doing office hours over Zoom community. So Dr. Thompson, if we could arrange for me to use the Zoom. I'd like to hear that. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else from anybody else? Okay. With that, I would like to adjourn in honor of two New Haven Unified School District part of our family. We have the late Kelly Thomas from CCMS, as well as our community member Ed Mack, who recently passed away. He was an important member of our community and our family here. So with that, I'd like to adjourn.